So listen to this. De Bruyne has been widely considered the greatest playmaker on the planet for almost a decade. Since 2020, he has created an astonishing 437 chances for his teammates. And right below him, there's Kimmich, Çalhanoğlu, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Rafinha and Thomas Müller. However, with 339 to his name, Thomas Müller is still closer to De Bruyne than De Bruyne is to the one player who is truly off the charts, having created 111 more chances than anyone else, Bruno Fernandes. And that's sort of the thing, it happens a lot. Here are the most decisive players over the past 5 years. Mbappe, Kane, Haaland, Lewandowski, Salah, and some midfielder whose team nearly got relegated last season. Still, don't get me wrong, I get it. There's a reason why for a long time if you googled his name, one of the first suggestions would be the word rat. Social media has made it very easy to see Bruno as the most punchable face in the sport. Just some crybaby who's either running around like a headless chicken or hogging the ball waiting for the perfect pass to present itself like some hero ball merchant. Yet, it makes sense that he's desperate for that perfect pass. What if I told you that over the years, De Bruyne's teammates were almost twice as likely to convert one of his chances than Bruno's? What if he knows only the perfect pass will be converted? I mean, think about it. The only reason things at United haven't gotten even worse is that they have a tendency to pull a rabbit out of a hat at the last minute, and if you haven't noticed it yet, Bruno is the only magician around. Yes, he misplaces more passes than 92% of midfielders, but look at everything else. His scouting report looks straight out of one of those fake players we made on Pro Evolution Soccer back when we were kids. What if Bruno is truly just a generational player stuck at the most dysfunctional club in the biggest league in the world? I can't help but think that anyone in that position, watching that ship sink, would lose their minds, kick and scream at everything that came in their way. The moment they saw their own teammates, some of them born and bred in Manchester, look so indifferent as they were about to go down with the club. Again, a lot of people seem to forget Bruno was 25 years old by the time he arrived in Manchester. They don't seem to realize this means more to him than the average footballer, that, to him, it has always been 1% chance, 99% faith. Look, even when he got scouted by FC Porto at 10 years of age, his own parents forced him to reject the chance because they didn't have a car and the club refused to get their van to pick him up for training, yet he didn't quit. Instead, he convinced Boavista, the other club in the big city, that it was worth the trouble of sending their van all the way out to Maia, almost half an hour away. But, of course, that wasn't it. Then, just as Bruno started approaching his final academy years, Boavista was forcefully relegated to the third tier in the midst of the biggest match-fixing scandal in the league's history. And so, with the club too busy trying to escape bankruptcy to notice the raw diamond they had, the years went by and at 17 years old, in the biggest Hail Mary of his career, Bruno's own brother-in-law somehow managed to get in contact with the scout all the way out in Novara in the Italian second tier, and without ever playing a senior match, he left his family behind and left for Italy. Suddenly, he was 1,000 miles away from home in an all-new academy where he was the only foreigner, and to make matters worse, there were issues with his paperwork, and for 8 months, without the club being able to pay him his wage, he lived off of the 50 euros a week his mother would send him, making it pretty much impossible for him to even leave his dorm room. He was calling his girlfriend every night, crying, saying he wanted to quit. So, before she even turned 18, she left the country as well and moved in with him, and that changed everything. By November, Bruno was being moved up to the first team, already communicating with everyone in Italian, and by February, with the club 2 points off of relegation with 10 defeats in the past 22 games, he was made into a regular starter and slingshotted him up the table with only 3 defeats in the remaining 20, sending him into the promotional playoffs, all while their club president nicknamed him the Maradona of Novara, and he began attracting interest from the likes of AC Milan and Juventus, though he would refuse to become a bench player again, instead taking a move to Udinese, hoping to follow the footsteps of Alexis Sanchez and Juan Cuadrado and getting to learn from D. Antonio Di Natale. Over 3 seasons at Udinese, as one journalist would explain, Di Natale took Bruno on as his pet project. He taught him how to strike the ball, when to let go of it, when to hold on to it, when to chase it, and when to wait for it. He just painstakingly went through everything he knew, almost as if to say, right, I think you're special, and I'm going to work on you. Honestly, I think, as another late bloomer, Di Natale saw himself in Bruno and wanted to make sure he wouldn't let his youth go by him the same way he had. And nothing proves that, as much as the time he publicly berated him towards his final season, claiming that he irritates me because he has more ability than any of us, but sometimes he forgets it. And indeed, the day Di Natale retired was the day Bruno left Udine. A move to Sampdoria followed, but though he got the honor of carrying Mancini's number 10 on his back, he still ended up feeling like he was only moving sideways, and with the brightest moments of his season coming precisely as the kid who had never played in Portugal now captained their under-21s. When Sporting showed up with an offer, he knew it was time to come back home. But, as per usual, it would be much harder than he deserved. Bruno Fernandes dominated Portuguese football in a way that was almost unbelievable. Only 22 days after his debut with Sporting, he was already being called up to the national team, and it was no wonder. That first season, he was named the league's Player of the Month 3 times, and its Young Player of the Month another 6. By the time he got that final award, not only had he already taken the League Cup title, but his 36 goal contributions that led Sporting to the Portuguese Cup final, and within a single win of Champions League qualification. Yet, that was where everything went wrong. Sporting lost that final match, and their ultras did the unthinkable. On the 15th of March 2018, 50 masked men broke into Sporting's training grounds with knives and steel bars, destroying everything in sight, getting into the locker rooms, and actually attacking the players. It was civil war, one of the darkest days in Portuguese football history. Understandably, the whole group was traumatized by the experience. After making it out of there, the first thing Bruno did was call his wife and ask her to take his daughter up north to Porto, where she would be safe. So, 5 days later, once they showed up for the Portuguese Cup final, with the team looking almost too scared to play, and inevitably being defeated by 13th placed Desportivo das Aves, one by one, the players began terminating their contracts in fear of what could happen next. And the squad vanished. They lost Gelson Martins to Atletico de Madrid, William Carvalho to Real Betis, Rui Patricio to Wolves, Mérida Miral to Alanyaspor, Rafael Leão to Lille, and Fábio Coentrão back to Real Madrid. However, Bruno, the league's Player of the Year, the one who received the most offers, as it would become usual, refused to abandon a sinking ship. After a couple cameos at the World Cup, Bruno came back, and with everyone assuming Sporting was doomed, he just refused to accept that, putting down 32 goals and 18 assists, breaking the all-time record for most goals scored by a midfielder by any European club, previously held by the legendary Alex Sousa. It was so absurd they were forced to hand him the captain's armband, and with it, he made sure to right all the wrongs of the previous year, beating Porto to both cup titles, and in the meantime, putting Sporting back in the Champions League. As the season ended and the rumors started, he had Jorge Jesus claiming that we bought him for 8 million, but today I wouldn't sell him for 80. The club president claiming he was to Sporting what Ronaldo was to Real Madrid, while his teammate Ristovski outright begged him to please stay with us, otherwise we're But though Man United and Tottenham would play the long game with Sporting all summer, refusing to pull the trigger on his signing even after he made it to the team of the tournament and won the Nations League, then he came back, dropped 29 goal contributions in just the first half of the season, and left the Glazers with no choice but to go for his signing now that Pogba's injury had forced them to play Andreas Pereira as their number 10. And man, there are no words for it. Bruno treated the Premier League the same way he treated the Portuguese League. When he arrived, with United in 7th place with only 9 wins in 24 matches, he had Solskjaer shooting down the Ronaldo comparisons, claiming it just wasn't fair. But then, first month in, Bruno started things off by becoming the first ever to take both Player and Goal of the Month at the same time. And despite the lockdown coming in his way almost immediately, the second football got restarted. It took the league's Player of the Month again, becoming the first United player since CR7 to take 2 back-to-back, having 20 more goal contributions until the end of the season, leading United on a 14-match unbeaten run straight past Chelsea and Leicester onto the Champions League spots, all while scoring or assisting against every team he faced in the Europa League, with an average of a goal contribution every 67 minutes in the competition, not just taking the Golden Boot there, but being named United's Player of the Year. Remember, both, despite having arrived midway through the season. By October, Bruno was raising his eyebrows in shock as he watched Solskjaer announce that he'd be named captain only 6 months after his arrival, and, almost as a thank you, he then proceeded to take the league's Player of the Month back-to-back yet again, becoming the first player in history to take 4 of those awards in a single year. I mean, come on, the guy won more of those awards in 2020 than every other player in the league put together. And so, by January, with United, believe it or not, at the top of the table, the FSA was actually naming him the league's Player of the Year. And as the rumors began going around that he was, without a shadow of a doubt, the most transformative player to arrive at United since the king himself, Eric Cantona, he went ahead and scored an almost perfect replica of his most iconic goal. Had United just managed to hold on to that momentum, Bruno would have secured legendary status at the club in just a season and a half. But unfortunately, not only did the sequence of draws force them to settle for second place, which was still their best finish in the 9 years since Sir Alex's departure, but after yet again scoring or assisting against every team they faced in the European competitions, not only did they get knocked down to the Europa League, but once he put them in the final with 5 goal contributions against Roma in the semis, once there, he watched as they lost on a penalty shootout, with David De Gea not being able to save a single of the 11 penalties taken by Villarreal. Even with the second Player of the Year award, nothing seemed enough to pay back Bruno for the work he had done, especially after he looked like a shadow of himself at the Euros, seemingly having run himself to the ground, trying to keep United afloat, and little did he know, the worst was yet to come. With the signings of Varane, Sancho, and above all, the return of CR7, for the first time in years, you actually saw the United fans claiming to have a super team, but reality hit them like a brick. In October, after a record 28 consecutive matches, Bruno finally lost an away game. By November, Solskjaer was getting the sack in under Rangnick. The second Bruno's legs gave out, now about 3 months before the season was even over. They went on another kind of streak. 6 consecutive away defeats. And yet, even in arguably Bruno's worst season at United, he still somehow managed to be the Champions League top assist provider. Yeah. And the following year wasn't much better. With the arrival of Ten Hag and the chaos that ensued between him and Ronaldo, it became almost absurd how different things were going for club and country. I mean, over the period of that season, Bruno was not only the World Cup's top assist provider, but he put down 22 goal contributions in 15 matches with Portugal, while at United, even though he did finally win a trophy, he was being humiliated 7-0 by Liverpool, while former players like Roy Keane demanded the club strip him of his armband for waving his arms too much. As if Keane himself wouldn't have lost his mind had he ever been forced to watch his teammates perform as poorly as they did that day. Come on, Keane went as far as saying that he isn't enough of a fighter, even in a year when he was the one player with the most minutes in all of world football, in a year when no Premier League player had run as much as he did, and when no one had been responsible for a higher percentage of their team's expected goals than him. Bruno created the chances for 25.2% of those. At United, the next best was Sancho with 7%. They should have known he was bound to shut their mouths. If having been one of the first players to publicly denounce the Super League wasn't enough sign that he really was a leader, at the end of that season, Bruno offered to pay for the staff members' travel and accommodation after new owners Ineos decided it was a good place to start cutting costs. Then, midway through the next, he rejected a contract offer of 100 million euros a year by Al Hilal, insisting United were always his ultimate dream, closing things off by putting down 5 goal contributions in 5 rounds on his way to another FA Cup final, where he'd assist the winner to defeat rivals Man City, taking the club to their first major trophy since the Mourinho era, getting Keane himself to back down, admitting that, "I've been critical of Bruno over the years, but I've been proven wrong. His leadership is outstanding." Ultimately, taking the club's Player of the Year award yet again, though, in my opinion, nothing compares to what just happened. This previous season, United got to the final match day of the Premier League with 38 points. For some perspective, the 40-point mark is often seen as the magic number that allows a team to escape relegation. Had they lost that final game, it would have been their worst tally since 1931. Yet, this time around, you won't find as many people questioning Bruno. Instead, you can find headlines calling him a one-man football team. In other words, he saved United from a much worse outcome. This attacking midfielder not only put down 37 goal contributions, he legitimately started approaching the very top of the charts for tackles and clearances in the top 5 leagues. In fact, he is the only player in the Premier League to average at least 2 tackles, 1.5 chances created, 2 shots and 30 pressures per 90. No one can possibly claim that he isn't a man to put down a captain's shift. He did whatever he had to do all season, and then he did something more. With the Europa League looking like their only shot at redemption, Bruno repeatedly showed up, scoring a hat-trick to beat Real Sociedad in the last 16, assisting one and then scoring the penalty that started a phenomenal comeback versus Lyon in the quarters, and then scoring twice and assisting another to put them in the final, only to end up losing regardless, even though this midfielder was again the competition's top scorer, at this point already placing 3rd in the all-time charts, while also being its 3rd highest assist provider. Yet, as they began dubbing him Mr. Europa League, it feels like an insult, one that, again, a record 4th award as United's Player of the Year simply cannot make up for.